Shalom Bethel family. It is Thursday once again, time to review our Torah Talk at Congregation Beth this past Saturday. On Saturday we read Parshat Emor, getting towards the end of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, and I wanted today, or I did on Saturday, to highlight the very idea of Emor. That root, Amar, means say. In this case, and the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and say to them. So you have say twice in that first sentence and also speak. And what we find is as God is giving these laws of purity to the priesthood, to the people, speech is emphasized again and again. As a matter of fact, I didn't have time to count them all, but I would be willing to bet that among the most common verbs in the Torah, if not the most common verb in the Torah, is the verb with the root amar, as in vayomer or emor or amar. It comes up again and again and again. Say, he said, and God said to Moses, say to the people, again and again and again. Speech is key. And it's not surprising because speech is considered such a powerful thing in the Torah, right? Right at the very beginning, right? We learn that speech can be a creative act, right? Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or Vayhi Or, right? God spoke and said, let there be light, and there was light. And so goes all of the story of creation. God speaks, and that speech is in and of itself a creative act that creates the world. But of course, speech can also be destructive, right? We learn from our rabbis that to slander a person is equivalent to murdering them. Why would that be? Because the words are permanent, right? Once you put them out there, they cannot be taken back, just like an act of killing someone is permanent in that way. Words have great, great power. That power can be the power of creation, and that power can be the power of destruction. I wanted to mention a few stories today that I think highlight that and how much we are living on that razor's edge with the potential for words to be creative and even provide salvation for us at complicated and difficult times, but also how maybe we're erring more right now on the side of destruction. Right, I started thinking about this. Many of you know of my work and dialogue with Hub, Hands United Building Bridges, and my partner for almost 3 years now in that has been Dr. Antipas Harris. And Antipas and I were asked recently to pray together at a public event. And it was amazing with all the years of dialogue and building cooperation between us and building strength in our relationship. Even with all of that, when it came to trying to figure out how to pray together, we were having issues and we were emailing each other. And as we emailed, the emails, by the way, if you're working anything out with someone that even has a little bit of tension possible in it, I don't recommend email or texting or tweeting or social media as the forum to work that out. And so right before Shabbat, I ended up calling Antipas and we spoke, and of course, then being able to use our years of built-up trust together and our will to work together and to hear each other's perspectives, we were able to work it out and start Shabbat much more positively. I was thinking about that and this power of words as I reflected on the news I heard about Starbucks and the Anti-Defamation League over the past few weeks. As many of you know, a few weeks ago, Starbucks got into a lot of trouble when one branch in Philadelphia, a couple of African-American young men came in to use the restroom. The manager called the police on them, and it became a whole, quite justifiably a whole thing, because it was pretty clear the manager would not have called the police if they were two white young men who had come in. And suddenly this idea that there was a lot of racial insensitivity out there, or maybe the wrong kind of racial sensitivity, right? Some kind of sensitivity that fear that was innate. And Starbucks did a great thing and said, we're going to close all our stores for a day, and we're going to train all of our employees all across the country in order to give them sensitivity training and help them understand to see all people as people first. A great thing. And they announced among a panel of about 5 people that the head of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, would be involved as one of the training organizations. Appropriately so, since the ADL has been founded in 1919, I believe it was. It has been on the forefront of anti-hate work, on tolerance work, of all kinds, of course, combating anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, but also combating all kinds of hate groups in the forefront in the 90s and the early aughts, as hate groups were multiplying online. It was the ADL who was on the forefront, protecting people of all kinds and promoting tolerance of every sort. There was then, remarkably, I thought, a protest by 2 women in particular, who were 2 of the founders of the Women's March in Washington, who said absolutely ADL should not be part of this. Why? There had been some back and forth between the ADL and them over the prior months. They had attended a talk of Louis Farrakhan's. The ADL was critical, both of Farrakhan for anti-Semitic rhetoric that he put forth, and for them for supporting Farrakhan in that rhetoric. They criticized, and then these 2 of them came out, we should boycott Starbucks again if they're going to hire the ADL. Now, last I understood, Starbucks is still using the ADL. In fact, they've actually expanded the ADL's role in this. No longer will the ADL just be involved on that one day, but now the ADL is going to actually be doing years of planning and curricula for the stores. But caught up in all of this was this idea that, Starbucks is not using the ADL anymore. Thank God, I hope it's true that Starbucks did not fall into that trap. Because once again, it's that power of speech. Here's this opportunity for speech to be used in a creative way, to take a horrible incident, and then this creative power of speech to train people, to teach people, to bring in groups who've been doing this kind of work for so long, to create that creative thing. And then all of a sudden, this destructive use of speech from people who should be allies, or at least acquaintances, in the battle for civil rights, but who choose to be destructive. And this insistence, I think, is so dangerous. This insistence that in order for us to work together, for me and you to be partners in anything, we have to agree on everything 100% down the line. The idea that the fact that 95% of our agendas align, or 90% or 80% isn't enough for us to work together, but in fact should cause us to boycott each other. That is so dangerous. It is such a destructive use of language, and it is tearing apart that aspect, and not just in our politics, but in our culture, in our communities, the way we interact. That destructive use of language is tearing apart the ability to do good things, to overcome the fear and anger, and to combat racism, prejudice, and white supremacy all around. And so that was the second moment I wanted to mention. And a third one that's maybe even the most troubling to me, and that's to say that even our own Beth El community is not immune to this kind of use of speech or insistence on purity. The Friday before last, we had a carnival at the shul, and there's a congregant who has a lot of liberal-leaning, Democratic-leaning stickers on the back of their car. And another congregant, while that person was in the carnival, decided to write a note. And the note was saying that I disagree with your stickers. And, I'm a conservative Republican member of Beth El, and you have made me feel unwelcome by seeing your stickers, and they're rude and lewd and obscene, and said a few very not nice things. But you know what? I don't mind that dialogue happening. If you put stickers on the back of your car, you are inviting a conversation. You're inviting a dialogue. I happen to know the congregant who has those stickers on their car be very fine engaging in that discussion and would happily defend their positions. But here was the problem with the note, right? The person didn't sign the note, right? An anonymous note is an attack, always. Right? Now it's shadowy. Now it's not a dialogue. It's a criticism. Now it's not a creative use of language, a chance to speak and dialogue and come to, if not an understanding on the issue or agreement on the issue, at least an understanding of each other and why they are each that way. Instead became a destructive use. And that was right there in the parking lot of Bethel at a celebration of our community. And what could be less communal than that? Than saying we can't enjoy a synagogue together if we don't agree, or we can't dialogue together because we can't agree. Here, right in our Bethel community. I'm very, very worried about this destructive use of language that we are warned against when we could be doing so much better with dialogue and with creation. And so as a demonstration, as an example of what I think is a positive use of language, I want to quote the Mishnah, and to quote the two Mishnahs, and I'll try and do it quickly. One is from the Mishnah Yevamot on 1:4. These are both about Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, two groups that didn't agree on anything, right? At the very basis of rabbinic Judaism, we have Hillel and Shammai, these two sages, and they spawn these schools, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. They almost never agree. And they even come sometimes very close to destructive language. Maybe even they cross that line. But there's two teachings about them that I think are the key to being able to disagree positively, to be able to disagree and still have it lead to creative speech and not destructive speech. The first one is this Mishnah from Yevamot. It says, even though that the one school prohibits and the other school permits, these disqualify and these allow, right? One school doesn't allow something to be, let's say, eaten or pure, and the other one does. Beit Shammai did not refrain from marrying women from Beit Hillel, nor did Beit Hillel refrain from marrying women from Beit Shammai, right? Even though they had different rules about who you could or could not marry, or what made someone eligible, they all looked at each other, even in their disagreement, and said, you know what? We know you're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do the right thing, and therefore, even if our rules disagree, if you're doing it right by your way and we're doing it right by our way, then we're still going to accept each other as part of a family. And also with regard to purity and impurity, where these ruled a matter pure and these ruled a matter impure, they did not refrain from using utensils that the others deemed pure, right? They would still eat in each other's homes. And so if you're doing it right by your way, that's enough for us. We don't, in other words, have to agree 100%. In order to come together. And in that coming together, hopefully, to strengthen ourselves through our disagreement, to create something new and beautiful, even through disagreement, maybe especially through disagreement. Like the two sides coming together to form a third, better option. And similarly, in Mishnah Eruvin, Rabbi Abba is speaking in the name of Shmuel, and he's also talking about Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. He says for 3 years they disagreed, and they argued. One saying that the halakha is this way, right? Jewish law goes this way. The other saying Jewish law goes that way. And then none other than a heavenly voice comes and intervenes and says, what does the heavenly voice say? These and these are the words of the living God. Elu ve'elu. Very, very famous statement. What does it mean? If this opinion is either right or wrong, and this opinion is either right or wrong, how could they both be the words of the living God? What I think it's saying is that, in fact, in the disagreement, that's what is causing the living God to be brought forth, that there is created in the space between the two sides the opportunity for holiness. That is disagreement as a creative act. Right? Elu ve'elu. These and these are the words of the living God. But, says this holy voice, Jewish law is decided according to Beit Hillel. And so someone asks a question. If a heavenly voice said that these are the words of the living God and these are the words of the living God, why would the law always be according to Beit Hillel? Fair question, right? And what's answered? Why? Because Beit Hillel students were gracious in their approach to Beit Shammai. They taught their own ideas as well as the ideas of Beit Shammai, right? Even when Beit Shammai wasn't around, Beit Hillel would inject their opinions into their teachings, understanding that that's how precious argument is. That in fact, in order for the speech to be creation, we need to bring both perspectives, not hide the other perspective. And not only that does this teaching go on, but it says that Beit Hillel went so far as to teach Shammai's opinions first. Right? Not only did they didn't say, well, we know it's this way. And by the way, Beit Shammai says it's this way too. No. They would say, oh, you want to know the answer to that? Well, you should know before I tell you anything. Beit Shammai says it should be this way. And also, by the way, Beit Hillel, us, we say it should be that way. So not only did they inject argument even when there wasn't one, not only did they appreciate the contrary opinions, but they even went so far as to put the other opinions first, right? That is speech as a creative act. That is speech in a way that can heal our broken society, rather than the speech we're experiencing, this slicing us all up and demanding this purity of thought and demanding this purity of speech that is pulling our country, it's pulling our communities apart. And that is evident from my experience with my colleague, Dr. Antipas Harris, even with all the trust we've built, coming this close to the brink of a huge argument because we weren't listening to each other, because we weren't using speech as a creative act. So it's true in our personal relationships. It's clearly true in our society, as we see in the Starbucks incident with these attacks on the ADL from people who should be allies with the ADL, even if they disagree on some things, right? And we even see it in our own community, as we did with this letter attack, this anonymous attack on the driver of the car with the stickers. It is time that we do better. It is time that we understand that we can use our speech to create and not to destroy. And that when we do, that's when we will bring healing to our communities, to our relationships, and dare I even say it, the world, as we read in Bereshit. It is an act of speech that is ultimately the act of creation. I hope we're all able to find ways to make those openings, to insert disagreement in a positive way into our interactions, and ultimately to bring the healing that I know we all want so desperately. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.